of the first Babylonian siege of Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar orders some of the captured young Israelite nobles, who are studly and smart, to be trained for palace service. Taken from their families, Daniel and his 3 friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, are about to face life-threatening adventures, and we'll see if they can remain true to their God when death is on the line. After they were taken captive, the Babylonians changed the names of Daniel and his 3 friends to Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. King orders all these young exiles to eat his royal food, but the food on the king's table is against the law of Moses, not kosher. However, disobeying the king could mean getting kicked out of the palace to suffer brutal slavery or death. But Daniel and his friends make the brave choice to stay true to their parents' teachings. And Daniel proposes a scientific experiment to the chief official. Please test us for 10 days. Give us nothing to eat but grain and veggies and water to drink. And if after 10 days we look good, then we're good. Well, while the rest of the young men ate the royal food, these 4 young men totally looked far healthier and better nourished at the end of the experiment than the rest. And because of their obedience, God blesses them with more knowledge and wisdom. In fact, 3 years later, the king finds them 10 times better than all his wise men and officially brings them into his service. Today, we're blessed with the word of wisdom as our health law with the same promise. Eating healthy, taking care of our bodies, and abstaining from bad stuff won't just help us physically, but spiritually and intellectually as well. Obeying this enablement truly pumps up our spirits to better complete our mission, just like it did for Daniel and his friends. Now, King Nebuchadnezzar, isn't a righteous man. Nevertheless, the Lord gives him a perplexing, recurring dream about an enormous statue getting destroyed. Troubled, he summons his wise counselors to explain his dream. But to make sure they just don't make up some floofy answer, he doesn't tell them what the dream was, and threatens to kill all of them if they can't interpret it. What? Most of the wise men freak out and hide because they don't have God's power and can't interpret dreams. But Daniel convinces the king for a little more time. Knowing God will help, Daniel and his friends humbly fast and pray to the Lord, who reveals the answer. Daniel then approaches the king, telling him what his dream was, and explains that it represents the future of various kingdoms. And we now know today that he was right. The head of the statue is of pure gold, representing you and your Babylonian empire. The chest and arms made of silver represent the Persians or Medes, who will one day conquer the Babylonians. The statue's bronze belly and thighs represent the Macedonians or Greeks, who will be the next great superpower. The iron legs represent the great Roman superpower that'll cover parts of Europe and Asia. And lastly, the feet and toes of mixed clay and iron represent the many divided kingdoms who will arise after the fall of the Roman Empire. Then, Daniel interprets the dream's end when a rock cut from the mountain without hands smashes the statue to pieces, only to become a huge mountain filling the earth. This, he says, represents Christ's restored kingdom, and unlike the other kingdoms, will never be destroyed and will endure forever. Amazed, the king says, "Surely your God is the God of gods and a revealer of mysteries," and then promotes Daniel and his 3 friends to become great leaders in Babylon. Unfortunately, old King Neb is pompous, cruel, and apparently has a poor memory, because he later crafts a giant golden statue and commands everyone to worship it instead of their God, or get burned in a furnace. With Daniel serving elsewhere, the 3 friends boldly declare, "If we're thrown into the blazing furnace, God will deliver us. But if not, even if God doesn't deliver us, we still won't serve your gods or worship your golden statue." And so they're thrown into the giant burning inferno. But when the king peers in, he exclaims, "Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed." Wait, 4? I thought we only threw in 3. And the 4th looks like the Son of God. Yep, Neb saw correctly. And because of their great faith, God again saves his servants unharmed in a way that seems incomprehensible. And finally, much later, after Nebuchadnezzar dies and his kingdom has fallen to the Persians, Daniel becomes King Darius's advisor. However, Darius is tricked by jealous government officials who scheme to have Daniel thrown into a den of ferocious, hungry lions. But at first light, Darius hurries to the lion's den and cautiously calls to Daniel. Daniel, has your God, whom you serve continually, rescued you from the lions? And Daniel answers, My God sent his angel and shut the mouths of the lions. They haven't hurt me. I think I'll call this one Schnookums. Overjoyed, the king has Daniel lifted from the den, throws in the scheming officials, and once again, God made the impossible possible by saving Daniel without a single lion scratch. This extraordinary miracle leads King Darius to decree, All people must fear and reverence Daniel's God, for he is the living God who rescues and saves, performing signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. Now we learn from these stories that God has incomprehensible power to save us and turn disaster into deliverance and problems into miracles. Yes, God can and does protect and deliver us from what we face in the world each day. But just like Daniel's friends taught, even if not, our goal is to always be obedient to the true and living God whose eternal promises will eventually come. Next week, we'll learn about God's great love for us through an amazing analogy.